Good evening, everybody. We are going to call this meeting of the Oakville Public Library Board to order for Thursday, May 15th, 2025. Before we get into our actual agenda, I'd like to read our territorial acknowledgement, and that goes as follows. The Oakville Public Library is situated on the Treaty Number 14 and Treaty Number 22 treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. Oakville is currently home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Regardless of where we come from, we are all interconnected through the land that we live on, water we use, and the air that we breathe. We are committed to a continuous learning journey and allyship. We seek to elevate Indigenous voices and lived experience to cultivate reconciliation in Oakville. Madam Committee Clerk, do we have any regrets this evening?
There are no regrets.
Thank you. Too few to mention. Any declarations of pecuniary interest to declare this evening? Not seeing any, so we'll move along. You've received your minutes from our previous board meeting, which was held on April 17th, 2025. Does anybody have a motion to potentially approve those minutes? Thank you, Ray. Anybody else seconded? Thank you, Rod. Any comments, questions, errors, or omissions? All in favor? Those minutes are adopted as circulated. Members of the board, we have a number of consent items. In fact, we have 3 items. Does anybody wish to separate any of those? Okay, Andrew? 5.2. Anybody else? Okay, let's go to 5.2 and then we'll deal with them en masse after that. You have the floor.
Thank you. So I'd like to move it with 3 minor edits that don't change the meaning, but are just grammatical or word choice corrections. So with the board's indulgence, on the second page, so page 2 of 4 of the policy, 4th paragraph under selection criteria, there are 5 bullet points. The 3rd bullet point reads, respect the tenets of freedom of expression and human dignity. I'd like to strike tenets and replace it with tenets, T-E-N-E-T-S, which I believe was the intended word. Carrying over 1 page, so page 3 of 4 under requests for reconsideration of exhibitions. 2nd paragraph begins, members of the public feel that, and I believe it should say members of the public who feel that. So add the word who between public and feel. And finally, under appeals, the final line essentially says, request for reconsideration, may submit a written request for appeal to the CEO within 7 of receiving the review decision. I don't know if it's days or perhaps weeks. I'm thinking probably days, but I don't know what the board's intention was on that.
It would definitely be 7 days.
7 days? Okay, so I'd like to move the policy with those 3 edits. So tenets, okay, adding the word who, members of the public who, and within 7 days of receiving the review decision.
Perfect. Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Thanks, Avis. All in favor? That's carried. I guess I should have asked if anybody had any further comments or questions before I rammed through that vote. Not seeing any. Okay. So we still have 5.1 and 5.3 to deal with. Would somebody like to give me a motion to approve the recommendations? Thank you, Meredith, and seconded by over here, Celso. All in favor? Those are carried. We don't have any confidential consent items, but we do have a number of discussion items, and the first is 7.1, our 2024 audited financial statements and external audit findings report.
Yeah, so I'm just going to pass this over to Jade.
Good evening, Jade. How are you?
Well, thanks.
Good.
Good evening, Chair Noel and members of the board. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight to introduce item 7.1, where the recommendation before you is to receive the 2024 audit findings report prepared by KPMG and then approve the draft financial statements for 2024 for the public library. And so I'm going to say a couple of highlights related to the statements, and then I'll pass things over to KPMG and they'll walk us through their audit findings report. So the first is that KPMG is prepared to issue the library a clean audit opinion, so an unqualified opinion, and shortly they'll walk us through how they came up with that and the various audit procedures. The second is that the 2024 operating surplus that was presented to you on the Q4 report in February is within $5 of the operating surplus included on the statement of operations and accumulated surplus on these statements. And so although these two methods of reporting are different, they do reconcile. And so intuitively, it's easy to think that if the surplus was repaid to the town, that net income should be zero on the financial statements. And I did want to highlight note 6 that reconciles this back to zero. And so the difference is really the difference between how we account for the library's book collection under accounting principles versus budget principles, as well as employee future benefits. And then the remaining difference is the activity for the Development Reserve Fund throughout the year, as well as Oakville Community Foundation Fund. And so these activities are library specific, and there's no funding from the town, so it stays within the financial statements at year end. The last item that I wanted to highlight is the investments with Oakville Community Foundation. So on the statement of financial position, these investments are held at cost, where note 2 to the financial statements discloses the market value of $1.4 million. And so this market value aligns with the Q4 reporting that you also received in February, where it showed the new capital into the OCF fund, the market appreciation, the investment fees, and any disbursements that came out. And so although the investments are held at cost on the face of the financial statements, the notes do disclose the market value, and this is consistent with other public sector entities, as well as it aids in the consolidation into the town's financial statements. So at this time, I'll turn things over to Matt Ciradelli, the audit as senior manager from KPMG, to present on his audit findings report, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for me on the statements or the audit process.
Great, thanks very much, Jade. Hopefully everybody can hear me and there are no technical issues, but if I'm a little too quiet, please do raise a hand and flag for me as we go through.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect, thank you very much. If we could go ahead 2 slides in the package. One more, we'll go to the audit highlights page. So this is a bit of a one-stop shop summary of everything in the report. I'll say right off of the top, Jade was correct to note that KPMG is prepared to issue a clean and unqualified audit opinion. That is the result that you want. There were no significant issues or limitations, access to information that would have caused us to even consider that. So a positive result overall. And I'll note that we've received the full cooperation from management and team. So the audit process was quite smooth from our point of view. Just going through some of these at a high level, as I will speak to them in more detail on further slides. There are a few significant risks and areas of focus that I'll talk through, just where KPMG spends their time during the audit in order to get to that unqualified opinion. And then we'll touch base as well on some of the new standards that the library was required to consider, although they did not have a significant impact from an accounting policy standpoint. On the right-hand side, you'll note that there are no misstatements, whether corrected or uncorrected. So nothing that came to our attention in a material respect that required adjustment to the package that was presented to us for audit. And similarly, no significant deficiencies or any deficiencies that we observed for that matter with respect to internal controls. The library's processes and policies were very consistent year over year. So when we refreshed our understanding and observations, nothing came to our attention that is required to be communicated to you in this report in that regard. Lastly, on the bottom right, independence. We do have a slide later in our report that does confirm that KPMG remained independent throughout the audit process. We remain independent now, and that there are no services provided to the library nor any of its related parties that would have otherwise infringed on our independence as your external auditors. Moving ahead to the next page, please. As of today, we are substantially complete the audit. There are no outstanding items with the exception of completing our presentation and observing the board's approval of the financial statements following today's meeting and obtaining the signed representation letter from management which is a customary letter exchanged between management and the auditor at the conclusion of the audit, just indicating that management has not withheld any information and has complied with all of their responsibilities as part of the audit. So again, following this meeting, we will exchange a signed copy of that letter from management with a signed copy of the auditor's report from KPMG. Moving to the next page. Very quickly, just nothing to report with respect to changes from the audit plan as previously communicated to you. That's a good thing. That means there were no curveballs and, again, no limitations with access to information that would have caused us to pivot from our planned audit approach. So we carried out the audit as intended in full. Moving on again, please. On this slide, we'll talk about the only significant risk present in the library's audit, and that is the presumed risk of fraud arising from management override of controls. So those that have seen KPMG's audit findings reports in the past will find this familiar. And the reason for that is because this is a presumed fraud risk that an auditor must address in every audit performed under our professional standards in Canada. Simply because of management's level of access to financial records and processes. They have the unique ability to override checks and balances and controls if they wanted to. So we have several procedures layered into our audit to address that risk. One of those is using software-based auditing tools to analyze 100% of the population of journal entries and extract outliers that we think might be unusual. We also look at any areas of the financial statements that involve management's judgment or estimation, and we make sure that there are no overly aggressive or conservative assumptions that would influence results in an untoward way. So no negative results from our procedures here. We had no scares or worries with respect to fraudulent transactions. Those that we sampled had valid rationale and approval across the board. Moving on to the next page. The next 2 pages I'll talk through at a relatively high level, just some of the areas of focus. We do not consider these to be significant areas of risk, but they are areas of focus nonetheless based on the materiality of all of these line items on your financial statements. So firstly, investments and investment income. We are able to easily get third-party confirmation and evidence about year-end balances and income and movement throughout the year, effectively 100% coverage of the investment population. And we have not seen anything concerning with respect to indicators of impairment. So it was relatively quick for us to obtain the evidence we need on investments and related income. Tangible capital assets, this would include equipment, things like that, but also the books and collections for the library, which, as Jade alluded to in her comments, are considered a capital asset for accounting purposes. So we do sample testing over any additions and disposals to ensure that they are recorded appropriately and meet the required criteria to be capitalized. Similarly, we complete an audit of the roll forward schedule of capital assets and ensure that they are properly amortized on an annual basis based on the library's accounting policy. No issue in that regard as well. And the last item on the page is our work over grants and income of that source. We have agreed the operating grant between the town and library without issue, that it agrees on both sides as approved. And we've obtained third-party evidence for outside grants and ensured that the recognition of revenue related to those is appropriate based on the requirements within those grant agreements. So a positive result in that area of focus as well. On the next page, please. The last 2 areas of focus we'll touch on the post-employment benefit liabilities. Jade also touched on this as an accounting item that requires a little bit of focus in our audit on an annual basis because it is an area of estimate that management does need to work with a third-party actuary in order to compute. In the prior period, the third-party actuary prepared a full valuation of the employee future benefit liabilities, which has been rolled forward 1 year for fiscal 24. So we did test all of the data provided to the actuary in that prior period to ensure they were given an accurate base to begin their work. In 2024's audit, we looked at the movement and changes in the assumptions that the actuary uses, things like discount rates and such, and we benchmarked those against industry comparatives and our expectations and noted that they were reasonable for use for the actuary's purpose. And lastly, consistent with the past, all of the disclosures related to these future benefit liabilities within the financial statements are in line with the public sector accounting requirements. So not a significant change from the past, but always an area of focus based on the nature of this line item. And lastly, operating expenses, including payroll and any related accruals. We do, on a sample basis, test purchases and expenses throughout the year. And we do focus on year-end cutoff as well to ensure any invoices provided after the fiscal period end that pertained to 2024 were accrued as appropriate. Also for payroll, same thing, we ensure that any payroll expenses that belong to the prior period are recorded as needed, regardless of when they are physically paid in cash. And the last thing I'll mention quickly on payroll is we did change our audit approach a little bit this year, took a different approach to our predictive analysis and headcount analytics. My apologies. That was just to add a little bit of element of unpredictability to our audit procedures, just to make sure management isn't able to predict our audit approach based on the past, and also to conform with a raising bar in terms of KPMG's audit methodology every year. Our standards internally, raise the level of detail that are required of us as auditors, just to ensure that our files are of good quality. So a little bit of a different approach there, but no significant issues and a positive result at the end of the day. That concludes our summary of the areas of focus. So the next few slides we can go through rather quickly. Again, I mentioned there are no audit misstatements to report on. You can see in the box there, our threshold for posting audit misstatements is just over $18,000. I'll always highlight that that is simply the quantitative threshold. If we did find a potential error or misstatement that was below that threshold, we still consider it qualitatively. And certainly if there was ever anything potentially fraudulent, there is no concept of materiality, anything even $1 we would be raising to your attention in our findings. But again, a clean sheet this year, so nothing to bring to your attention further in this regard. Moving on. I did mention that there were a few new public sector accounting standards that have come into play this year. 3 of those which are profiled on this page. The latter 2, purchased intangibles and public-private partnerships, did not apply to the library in any way, so they were considered but had no impact, as the library does not have those elements in their operations. The first one, PS 3400 revenue, also had no impact on the library upon adoption. Other public sector reporting entities have considered that in more detail if they have certain revenue streams that are impacted by that standard change, but the library did not have significant impact. So again, these all came into play, but did not change anything in terms of the library's policies or practices. Moving to the next page, please. Specific topics, just again, we referenced off of the top that the audit was quite smooth from our point of view, and we got the full cooperation of management throughout, so there were no contentious conversations or disagreements that we have to bring to your attention, and no issues of illegal acts or fraud that were brought to our attention throughout the audit. So just reporting back to you that there were no issues in any of the areas profiled on this page. Lastly, on slide 13 of our findings report is just our slide confirming our independence. Again, I spoke to this off the top of the presentation, so just putting it on the page, but again, confirming that KPMG remained independent as required throughout the entire process. Now, the rest of the package in terms of our findings report is simply appendices. I don't propose to go through these in any detail, as it is more thought leadership for your reference. I will say on page 20 in particular, there are some clickable links to some good resources for committees and boards. So if that is of interest, please do realize that you can click on those links to get a little more reading material. And if those don't work for some reason, do please feel free to reach out through management to KPMG, and we can provide PDF copies of some of that thought leadership if of interest to anybody. With that, I'll conclude KPMG's presentation and open it to any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Members of the board, do you have any questions for our auditor? Oh, Andrew, you have a question. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. This may be a question for Jade. Let me know if it's not the right forum. But regarding the unfunded benefit amount, which is note 7, I believe. So it mentions that OMERS is 98% funded with a deficit of $2.9 billion. It's implied but not explicitly stated. Is the unfunded amount that we're capturing the library's portion of that total gap?
Through you, Chair Knoll, to the board member. Yes, that is correct. So right now we have no future liability related to that unfunded amount, but if OMERS were to increase rates significantly in future years, our rates would also increase in those future years. So they'll never have to go back and have a liability that we'd owe, but it could go up in future years if they decide to close that deficit by increasing both the employee's portion and the employer's portion.
Okay. So there's no known timeline when we might be expected to make that contribution.
It would just be if OMERS changes their annual amounts going forward.
Okay.
And it's possible, though, that markets won't change. There's years in the past where OMERS reduced their contributions significantly, and so we really don't have an idea of when that would happen. It's all at their discretion based on market performance and how the fund is funded, really.
Okay. Just from the standpoint of looking at the accumulated surplus in total, presumably we would always have to have an amount sufficient to cover that potential liability. Is that correct?
Sorry, no.
No?
No. So that deficit is for the entire OMERS plan, right? And so the library just has some members in that plan. So, but there's also town, all sorts of other.
Sorry, I'm speaking, if I go back to point 6, I'm speaking about the unfunded total listed as $525,800. That's on page 10 of your report.
Oh, apologies for the confusion there.
No, I was looking at both lines, sorry.
So we fund that on an annual basis. And so there is, you don't have to fund it, have that future obligation and that liability there. We put aside money to pay our current plan costs in each year.
Okay, so it is captured each year. We don't need to.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
So we do have that liability based on time and estimate of so somebody working today, that cost is going to be when they retire, between the time they retire and 65. But in terms of actually funding it, we fund that each year in the budget for when we actually incur those payments.
Okay, that's great. Thanks
Sorry
very much.
for the confusion on
No,
that.
same. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Further comments or questions? I am not seeing any. Andrew, would you mind giving me a motion to approve the, I believe that's the, recommendation that the 2024 audit finding report for the year ended December 31st, 2024 be received for information, and that the draft final financial statements of the Oakville Public Library for the year ending December 31st, 2024 be approved. Are you prepared to give me that motion?
I'd be happy to move that.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Bill. All in favor? Actually, hold on. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Congratulations to the team for another clean audit. Thanks, Jade.
Yeah. Thanks to Jade and her team. They do a great job keeping us
They sure
organized.
do. Okay, let's move on to 7.2, which we kind of morphed into a little bit.
So I've we have before you the comprehensive financial report for the Q1 of this year. It's still early, our projections, but it does represent where we're expecting our surplus to be. You will note it is significantly larger than we've seen it in past years. However, the majority of that is as a result of the change of the opening date for the 16-mile library. That was supposed to open in September, but is now opening in Q1 of 2026. So that those funds will be unrealized and returned back to the town. So we are going to work on, and I'll report as we go through, just separating out what's accounted to that and versus what would normally would be included into the surplus, just so that a board has an idea of how to separate those out a little bit. But beyond that, we are on track for the rest of the year, but happy to take questions about any specific areas you'd like to delve into.
Just a quick comment. I just realized that all that advocacy to get that additional funding
I know.
to just went for naught.
Construction, what can I say?
Well, it goes back to the town.
It
so,
makes 2026 a little bit easier, so.
yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. We don't get that amount, though. Okay, further comments or questions? Celso.
For the portion of the surplus that is not related to the 16-mile, do we have plans for it?
We do. Depends what it's for. So some of it will come back to the board because normally near the end of the year, after Q3, we kind of have a sense of what that's going to be. We come to the board to the past and say, hey, we recommend putting $100,000 towards collections.
Right.
So that tends to be near the end of the year. Some of it is timing because we only have a certain confidence level about where our surplus is going to be closer to the end of the year, and at that time it can be challenging to implement a lot of things and have it done for the end of the year. That being said, we are trying to keep an eye out about how we can support different initiatives as we go through, recognizing potential surplus areas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Celso. Avis.
I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly. On customer experience, our projected year-end variance is a positive 117,000, and 309,000 relates to 16 miles. So is the full difference between the 116 and the 309 related to this, the janitorial services?
It would not be that much.
Yeah.
I don't know if Belinda is on.
It just seems like
Yeah.
a large amount to be explained as the offset to the 309.
Belinda's there. Yeah.
You
Hello,
can get-
I'm here. This is Belinda. I just wanted to note, and maybe I didn't make it clear in that, that's a great question. There is also $100,000 of gapping that we build in, and it sits in customer experience. So that is the other piece of it. So it's
Okay.
that and the extra janitorial services costs.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Avis. Further questions on this report? Andrew?
I too have a question about janitorial services. So the note that purchase services is projecting to be over budget in janitorial services due to the higher projected costs at White Oaks and Clearview locations. And it goes on to mention that they were higher last year as well. I'm just surprised at the amount of variance, and I'm wondering if you can qualify the reason for such a large delta in the numbers.
We have actually increased the amount of cleaning that happens at those two branches. So remember that Clearview and White Oaks are in schools. And so we use a different cleaning service. We use a school board approved cleaning service for those. They're different than what the cleaning service for our 5 other branches. And so, but only during certain days, because the custodial team at the schools clean the library, except on weekends and when there is no school. And so we have increased the cleaning that's required in there, and that's just the cost as related to that contract.
Okay, so, because I don't recall this coming up for 2023, for example, and earlier, so we've actually had to increase the frequency of cleaning?
Yes.
Okay, is there a reason behind that?
We just weren't having the cleaning in there, and we've discovered that over time, we've just had to increase the hours in order to be able to meet those needs.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
It has a lot to do with usage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
Probably different standards after the pandemic as well, I would imagine.
a little bit, yeah. Yeah.
Everybody seems to.
Tracks with some of the survey results too that we talked about last.
Right, yeah.
Further comments or questions? Meredith?
On the last page, page 7, I was wondering if you could remind me what DCH stands for.
Downtown
Cultural Hub.
Cultural Hub. I was blanking on the C, Downtown Cultural Hub. So that is the council's vision for the downtown Oakville as related to the library, and the theater, and all the different cultural elements in the downtown core. So it'll be a multi-phase project, of which the library is phase 1.
Okay, and so that's still an ongoing planned project?
The DCH?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's town run.
Okay, thanks.
Further comments or questions? Can I get a motion to approve the recommendation, which is simply, I believe, is receipt? Let me just double check that. That the comprehensive financial progress report as of March 31st, 2025 be received for information. Would somebody be, thank you very much. Rebecca, seconded by? Thank you, Avis. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, moving right along, we're going to move to 7.3. That's the safety and well-being of children and youth policy.
So aligning with the OPL goals for 2025 of allowing the directors to start interacting more with the board, I'm going to pass it over to Caitlin.
Ooh. We're going to miss you.
Good evening. So you have the Safety and Well-Being of Children and Youth Policy, draft revisions for feedback. We have brought it forward. As you know, we bring policies forward regularly for review and revision. We have made a number of significant edits to this policy. So pointing out a few of those changes, we have renamed the policy. It was formerly called the Safety and Well-Being of Children Policy, and we have brought youth into the title for alignment. The policy also previously linked out to the Ontario Library Association's statements on the children's rights in the library and the teens' rights in the library. And at this time, we felt that it was important to bring that wording directly into the policy. So you'll see those statements now in the policy. And we have made some other changes, removing some procedural elements, as well as changing some of the language to more closely mirror the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act in regards to the responsibility for the supervision and care of children that is reasonable within the circumstances to be remaining of the sole responsibility of parents, guardians, or caregivers. So looking for general feedback.
Feedback. Ray.
Thank you very much. This is perfect because in the recreation side too, they go with the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act too. I think that's an overlying provincial law. And but I want to clarify for the audience and for the public with respect to duty to report. Could you give a little bit more detail for the board and to the public to understand what that means to your staff when you have suspects of child, and I use the word abuse, not taking care of their children at times?
So the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act does outline the responsibility for all persons, members of the public, including professionals and organizations, to uphold the duty to report if they suspect a child or youth under the age of 18 or who they believe to be under the age of 18 to be in need of protection. So our policy still outlines that we uphold that responsibility. The more procedural directions for staff are included in a separate procedure.
Well, thank you. Just for clarification, and maybe I'm outdated. When this law came down or legislation came down, there was a due to report, and if you did not report, there was a fine incurred to the organization. Is that still in play?
I would have to check into that.
Yes, because that's important, because it has happened where a duty of report didn't happen, and unfortunately, they were fined by the Ministry of Community and Social Services.
I do know, there's one thing that we are looking at, the town does have much more strict duty to report procedures than we do, especially reflected in their summer camps, just because of how the summer camps function. We do have that documentation, and we are looking about how to take some of the learnings for duty to report and how we can bring it into the library and make it clear to staff where that line is. It is very gray. And so we do try to approach it cautiously, but also make sure that we are addressing it as needed.
Yeah, the only caution with that, with respect to reporting, is that if one of the staff, whether it be a supervisor, manager, or just one of the front staff, have that suspicion, that's to deal with your manager or your supervisor or right to the top on it before, because sometimes staff get a little excited and they go right to Children's Aid Society without the due process. So just as long as the training's in place, I'm comfortable with it. But I'm glad that we're following the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act. Thank you.
I saw another hand over here, but Celso, you have the floor.
Yeah, on page 3, I believe, this is under the section on responsibility for supervision and care. So there's a quote here from that act that talks about no person having charge of a child younger than 16, and so on. And then it goes on below to say that children under the age of 10 should not be left alone. And maybe I'm nitpicking here, but creates a bit of a conflict, right? Because is it 10 or 16? And I suspect, especially at our libraries that are close to schools, there's lots of kids under 16 that just stay there alone, right? So I wonder if that quote is causing some confusion. Well, it caused some confusion for me, so I wonder if we could maybe strike out the quote and just name the section.
So the recommendation is to look at removing the direct quote out of the policy.
As a suggestion, if I'm the only one confused by this, then I take it back, but it caused some confusion for me.
Yeah, we can look at bringing that into alignment. They are both in the legislation. So we'll go back and maybe pick the lower one so that there's no confusion.
Yeah, does that make sense to you, though?
Yep.
Also, can you just help me? Where is this on page 3? You said
Page 3 of the edited document.
Yes.
Under responsibility for supervision and care. Page 3 under responsibility for supervision and care, second paragraph.
Okay, I'm looking at the wrong page 3.
Oh, I get it. Okay. So it's the Child, Youth, and Family Services Act specifies 16, but the recommendation from the Children Aid Society recommends children under 10.
Right.
So yeah, so we can probably bring that a little bit better into alignment so that it doesn't seem like a conflict. We're basically taking both and then kind of.
Because we definitely don't want 16, because I'm sure there's lots of kids under 16 near high schools that come to our
normally
library.
the 10 is our threshold.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we can make that clear.
Okay, further comments or questions? Andrew?
Yeah, just to build on that, like I understand from Celso's point, you know, there's reference to 16, there's reference to 10, there's reference to 12, there's reference to someone who appears to be under 12. So anything we can do to sort of, I think, clarify and crystallize, because, you know, I agree, obviously we have teens, they're allowed to leave high school on their own, they can walk right into the library, and we don't, or shouldn't, I believe, have a problem with that. And I think when you incorporate reasonable in the circumstances, most of the teens are able to care for themselves and get to where they need to be on time. So I appreciate that you're referring to these, you know, these guidelines and legislation notes. So I think even if there's a section, you know, at the top or the bottom that sort of lists some thresholds, like under 10 must not be left alone at all, right? Over 12, I guess, can be on their own, things like that. It might help to provide clarity to the whole document, but I appreciate the thoroughness with which you've referenced all of these applying rules.
We'll definitely take a look at it. Some of the challenges is the nuance, right? And we've kind of hesitated to give it a hard age because
Kids
one
are
10-year-old's different than a different 10-year-old. And so it is, to us, it's really more behavior-based and concern-based, right? So if there's a child in the library and they're doing disruptive and we're having challenges with them, that's a conversation. Where's your parent? Can we have that? We also recognize that the library is a safe place. So there are worse places that children could be. And so it is trying to figure out what that balance is that we create an environment that's welcoming for everybody, but that we also have the ability to have discussions with families about what's best suited for their family in our spaces.
No, and I, based on what you're saying, I mean, I do sort of feel through the whole document, there's a lot of room for subjectivity based on the situation, right? Which I appreciate greatly. So, yeah, keep the good, and if we can clarify a few things, I think it's pretty good, Thank you.
Meredith?
Yeah, not to belabor the point, but that I noticed that too and was just confused. Just to identify, especially at White Oaks, where the library is the school library, so there's absolutely, grade 9s. So just this reference of like an age, at White Oaks especially, that is their school library. So there will be grade 9s regularly in the course of a school day in and out of the branch. And so the 16 felt like an odd number to call out, especially in that context.
Yeah, I will say that for White Oaks, technically when they're in the library, they're under the supervision of school staff. So that would be their caretaker at that time. And that's what makes it a little bit different. But you're right, it's nuance that we need to make a little bit clearer. Thanks.
Okay. Further comments or questions? Okay, so I have one. It might lead to a second one. What is the, particularly around this issue of dealing with the duty to report, how is staff trained on that? Or how are you able to actually impart that responsibility and how to watch out for those circumstances to the staff?
Yeah, it is embedded in some of the training that we do for our staff in order to look for, or more importantly, where they do have concerns, what the process is. So we have had issues where staff have been concerned on the tone of how a parent is speaking to a child. And so they have gone to their supervisor and really talked it through. And then that you move to, okay, what else are you observing, right? Because you don't know what that moment in time means for that parent to be, right? So you don't want to make assumptions for it, but are you seeing them in repeatedly? So we do work them through that and really encourage them to have conversations with their manager and supervisor to really talk about, okay, are we at the point where we have reported in the past as well.
Okay. So I've been around a long time. Approximately 20 years ago when I first, 22 years ago when I first joined the library board. It's been a long time. I was gone for a little while, but anyway, we actually had a case where a parent came to the board to object to the fact that their child was not allowed to stay in the library, and I think the child was 8 or 9, and this was that parent's after-school procedure. The child would go to the library, stay in the library until a certain time, and then would come home when the parent would unlock the door. Is this still something that happens in the libraries, and if so, how do you deal with that?
So it is. Yeah. It definitely still happens. And it's really, it is subjective, right?
Case by case.
People can come in, as long as they're doing their thing and aren't disruptive. For the most part, we kind of let it lie. If we see that there's a repeated pattern, we may have a discussion with the child just to kind of query. We do have, especially in our rec centers, parents will go for a swim and leave their kids in the pool. So they're in the same facility. So even to be aware for those kind of pieces, we do kind of address them more on a one-off basis. Technically, it isn't allowed. But at the same time, we recognize it may be what's best for the child at that point in time. So we do want to allow for that flexibility while still enabling staff to have discussions with parents as needed.
Okay. And in the case where a child is apparently under the age of 10, but has entered the library or been left by a parent in the library and the child is discovered and there's a concern on the part of staff, what is the protocol at that point? How do you manage it?
Well, we normally ask them where their parents are. Sometimes they know, and then we have gone to search for the parent to have a conversation. Hopefully they know their phone number or they have their phone number on them, and we will call the parent. Okay. We have had instances where we've closed and there's been children without parents, in which case we have had to involve the police and work through some of those pieces.
Is this one of those instances?
The circumstances are all so unique.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay, thank you. Did anybody have a further, Ray?
Yeah, a couple of, I understand, Tara, exactly what it's a moving target
Yeah.
with respect to the concerns. But sometimes you don't even know what the age of the child is you're
Correct.
dealing with. So that's a big one. The difficulty you have is it's almost trying to be preemptive with the parents and saying, you know, this is not daycare, and that's what. And you know what? And I'm not blaming parents. I mean, they're tired, they're frustrated, they can't find daycare, and they find gaps. You know, oh, let's go to the library. You can be there for the library a couple hours while I'm still at work. So it does has its social problems and challenges. So you know, the sensitivity has to be there, and I do appreciate the challenges you have with that because you are a building and it's warm, and it's something that you deal on a one-on-one basis, and the conversations, and sometimes these children really don't want to be there, but they have to be there because the parents are working. So I just leave that as a topic that will be continuing on in all our facilities over time. So you know, with working parents and the pressures we have. So anyways, I leave that with you, Tara, and staff. Thank you.
Yeah, we do also, it's one of the things that we're thinking about in terms of 16 Mile, because we suspect that we may see quite a few of instances of this in 16 Mile, because you're in a hockey tournament, you know, your brother's playing 3 games of hockey, you're tired, I'm gonna go to the library. Right? So again, our kind of rule that we're looking for is as long as they're not disruptive, and if we have a conversation, their parents is in the facility, where can we kind of enable that? Because they're probably much better off in the library than they are wandering the neighborhood.
Yeah. Andrew.
This has been a great discussion, and I don't remember exactly what it was Ray just said, but I think because there is so much subjectivity, I wonder it might help the board if you could give us a couple of examples of some of the more extreme occurrences, good or bad, so that we can have a sense of sort of where the boundaries are, but also where the majority of the focus needs to be in terms of setting clear guidelines. So if you just give us a couple of examples that you know of.
Doesn't have, I'm trying to think of like example,
Like when you
it was
went
a couple of years ago where I think it was Glen Abbey where we closed and there was a child that was left behind. So obviously a staff stayed, and we had to call the police, and then they managed that.
And the child was presumably looked to be under 10?
I do believe they were under 10.
Okay. And can you share any of the resolution?
No.
No, okay.
Once it really is in the police.
The police take charge of the child,
Yeah.
and then you close and staff go home? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know specifically whether or not the next time the child was in, the staff had a conversation or not. I don't necessarily get that level of information. You know, I gave you the example of tone. I do know that we had that incident, and so that was worked through with staff on those pieces. You know, I like Oakville. I've been in Oakville 10 years. We have less of issues that come up to my level to be dealt with or at least discussed through than I have in previous roles. When I was at Regina Public Library, and I do tell this story to staff sometimes. It's not a great story, but we had one branch where somebody left a baby in a baby carrier because they had something to do, and so that was different. So we did have to work through that. And we had to change some of our policies.
To be clear, that wasn't like, I can't take care of this baby anymore. That was, they
No,
intended to come back.
they came back.
It was, okay.
They did. They came back.
Right.
They had something to do. So we've had many more incidences of that. And Regina also has a lot of gangs. So how we managed children was very different than here. But the majority of them, and I don't know if Caitlin has another example, are just disruptions, really, where kids are running around the branch screaming and disrupting people, and you're like, where are your parents? And a lot of times they're not in the facility.
Right.
And so then we have conversations with them and remind them and pointing to an updated policy and just kind of then informing them. And normally that does resolve it. I don't know if we necessarily have a lot of repeated behavior after we have that conversation.
No, for the most part, it's children just needing that adult who is able to help them with their needs and you know, help them behave in a manner that's appropriate for the space.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, this is a topic that that everyone feels very strongly about. So again, appreciate all the care you've put into it. It sounds like it's dealt with fairly well based on so far what's happened. At some point, you know, you hope common sense prevails, but we know the problem with common sense. So again, thank you for the care, and really appreciate that the library can be a safe place and a welcoming space, regardless. So look forward to the next iteration.
Further comments or questions? Ray again.
Yeah, just quickly, there is a difference where we have children that are in program. If they're in program, you'll find parents will they're out the door.
Yeah.
So that's always a challenge too. So there's a difference. If there's children in the library, they're not in a program, they're just hanging in there. There could be an issue with that. But if they're in program and they're designed for that, and the children, but parents go out the door, where you have the challenge is the parents don't come back in time to pick up their children.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those things that happen that staff deal with on a everyday basis. So everybody does what it needs to do. No child goes unattended.
No.
Doesn't matter. You know, if the parent's not there, that child's not unattended. We take care of it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Further comments or questions? Just a quick comment. I do really appreciate the clarification on the flexibility, because you've said it a couple times. I think it's really important to emphasize the criticality of our libraries being safe spaces. Children are subjected to bullying and home problems and all sorts of things, and having a place to go where they feel safe and feel welcome is really critically important. And that age gets younger and younger, it seems, every year. I know that I can just impart a story on my private sector business. During the summer, it's not uncommon for a parent to pull up in front of the theater, drop their kids off, and then pick them up again around 6 o'clock at night. It's unfortunate, and we don't really encourage it, but it happens all the time. And my staff, like your staff, take very good care to make sure that the children are safe. And if it becomes disruptive, that's the same policy. It's unwritten for us, but it's the same policy we deploy as well. Because it's you know, if the parents can't take care of the kids during the day and they're roaming around, it's probably safer to be in the library reading a magazine or playing on the computer than dodging cars in the streets. So thank you for that. Can I get a motion to, this is a receive for feedback resolution, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Ray, thank you, and Rebecca, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. That was a great discussion, and thank you very much for the work on that. That's I can't imagine a more important policy, to be honest with you. So
It's a big one.
okay, we're moving on to 7.4, which is performance and measures Q1 2025.
So this is your first performance and measures report for 2025. We do try and listen to what the board says throughout the year, and then coming in January, it's easier for us to make changes than halfway through the year. So we have taken some of the feedback that we gathered from all of you and made some updates to the report for this year. So you can see that the cardholder section has been restructured, providing clearer insights about cardholder registrations, cardholder retention, and Oakville households, which we're adding in for the first time this year, now that we have a year under our belt of tracking that. The program events section has been adjusted to better report on the measures that relate directly to our strategic priorities. We've also added back in the older adult category that we had removed a number of years ago, as well as added in a community outreach section that kind of highlights the outreach that we're out in the public doing, because we felt that was very important for the board to kind of pull that out, because that is definitely was a big focus for us last year, will continue to be a major focus for us this year. So being able to pull that out. So I'm happy to take comments or questions about any of the changes or any of the numbers that you're seeing. Oh, and I will also speak to the increase for the digital, because I think we highlighted that we saw a massive increase due to Canadian Business Online. So we have validated with the vendor that is sniffer, and sniffer, I think is what they called it. And so it's not reflective of people. Scraper, maybe it's a scraper, in there, although we do suspect that there was an increase because the timing does align with tariffs, and that is a major database that people would use to research that. So we are working back and forth with the vendor to try and figure out what an appropriate number could be, if we're able to identify the IPs that the sniffers used, we might be able to more appropriately report on it, but that's work that we're going back and forth with the vendor on. So we bring the Q2, we're hoping to bring a bit more information about that, but just a follow up on that note that we didn't have at the time.
Comments or questions? Celso?
So I saw the a reduction in branch services, 14% year over year, and 6% reduction in program and event attendance,
Yes.
right? And then I went on, and it says that there's a 1% increase in foot traffic, which sort of suggests a bit of a disconnect. Then you go on and you say, well, that's only White Oaks, really, because all of the other branches saw a reduction in foot traffic. Okay, that makes sense. But then I go back and I think about one of branch services is Wi-Fi sessions. And White Oaks, bunch of students coming into the library, I would suspect that they use a lot of Wi-Fi services. So the question is, wasn't the increase in foot traffic of White Oaks, which sort of almost offsets the decrease of foot traffic everywhere else, not enough to increase the using branch services as well? How come there's a reduction there? I don't know if the question is making sense. It was complicated in my head.
I think, but I'm not sure I can answer that off the top of my head.
Okay.
We might have to look into that and maybe do a bit of investigation with White Oaks, because you're asking why, with the increased foot traffic at White Oaks, we're not seeing increases in some of those branch services like Wi-Fi use.
Enough.
Those increases should correspond.
Enough to, exactly,
Yeah.
enough to offset the decrease everywhere else,
Yeah.
as it did with foot traffic.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we can dig into that and see.
Thank you. Further questions, Bill?
Yeah, it was just, you mentioned rapid housing and population growth will most likely outpace household cardholder growth, and I was just wondering why that was.
So it has to do with, it kind of pointed out that we're always chasing a moving target when we talk about cardholders and households by card, right? Because every year that increases. And so the amount of newcomers coming in and new people coming in is to our mind possibly outpacing our ability to get in there. And so that's one of the reasons that we really also pulled out community engagement, because how we're trying to do that is through outreach.
Right.
Because the way that development charges and branches work, we tend to go into neighborhoods when they're done. Because
Right.
we need the development charges in order to get into the neighborhood. So, for example, 16 Mile, we're moving up there. We got in 2019, but there's you're gonna miss a generation of kids by the time we get up there. And so we're trying to increase our outreach to get in there and kind of close those gaps, but recognizing that can be a challenge without physical spaces to actually bring people in. So that's just recognizing that the community nodes that are going in place where we're seeing growth is a real challenge for us to make major in-depth inroads
Right.
without physical spaces in there. We're still going to try,
Right.
but it's just a recognition that those can be misaligned.
So it just takes a little while for them to figure out.
Because some of
There's
those
a
new
library
neighborhoods, they can be quite isolated until the full
Right.
growth comes in.
Okay.
Because you may have one developer that's developing.
Yeah.
And Trafalgar's a great example. Once you get past Dundas, you'll see development and then a bunch of green space and then development, right? And it's just how the developers are
Right.
doing it. And so you get these little satellites of growth in communities that are hard for us to get into. We're working at different ideas about how to get into them.
Right.
Eventually, there'll be branches up there.
Right.
We'll be able to fully support them, but just recognizing that the growth in Oakville is really outpacing our ability to address.
Yeah,
those
so it's
particular
sort of a
areas.
short-term thing
Yeah.
where eventually they would get a card. It's just not immediately.
Yeah, we
kind
have
of
to
thing.
remind them that we're there, because a lot of times, they're just trying to be connected into the community, and it's not just us. We know
Right.
that recreation and
Yeah.
during budget we've had conversations, people, because they want to know who to connect with and how to connect, and it's just some of it's just timing.
Right, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Okay. Oh, Avis.
So thank you for the new format, and it's very clear, and I like all of the insights being called out. One thing that might be helpful, so maybe not this year, maybe a next year thing, but so coming out of the insights, are there any actions? And sometimes I think there are actions that are embedded in the insights, but is there a way to call out those actions separately?
Yeah, we can definitely look at that. I know that's one thing that Caitlin and her team really talk about once we do this, because this is the board's version of it, but we also have this version internally. It's really the managers looking at it and being like, okay, what is this telling us? What do we need to dig into? What do we need to ask questions about? And how can we take this information and make service adjustments within our branches? So what we might not do in each one, but maybe as part of the Q4 is kind of summarize some of the key updates or changes that we made as a result of that piece with that work.
Because some of those trends might just be the quarter. So
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yep.
Like, you need a little bit more of a horizon.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Further comments, questions? Celso, go ahead.
On the digital circulation versus physical, I noticed that the lines crossed, right? This quarter, meaning digital circulation higher than physical. On page 2.
On
of
page
24.
2? Yep.
This is the first time that happened, that you recall?
No, I'm trying to remember. I thought our physical.
It's actually significant. Where I'm going with this is, if that's a trend
Yep.
and it continues that way, I wonder if this is a data point should inform our future planning of libraries. Because if it's really going digital,
Oh, yeah.
then the way we plan spaces, I think, should change.
Yeah. Well, even, it's still, because we still haven't submitted the shelving for 16 Mile yet. It's still an ongoing discussion, even with 16 Mile, about, and we've decreased the amount of shelving that's going in there, and the longer it's taken, we've kind of tweaked it even more to find an appropriate balance in there. And even, Trafalgar Urban Core South, we're looking at a very different type of model because we suspect it'll be space that people will be more interested in. Definitely, we're a library, we will have books, but we may not have the same level that we have at some of the other branches. So that is absolutely something that's an ongoing discussion, is how do we find that balance? Because people who like print, but the role of a library as a repository is definitely changing.
Right, thank you.
Anything further? Okay, I've got a couple. I see the reduction in library of things is quite substantial, and the explanation is because items, I lost the page. Items are
Yeah, we
being
pulled a
reviewed?
bunch of them for review.
Well, why?
That is the, can you explain? I can, better than I can.
There's, no, I know, but I'm curious
Monica's in
why that's the
Amsterdam.
case,
She
though.
has the best answer, but she's not.
So some of the kits, the Library of Things collections have been proving challenging in repair and maintenance, replacement of parts. So some of it is review and some of it is review on how to fix and get it back into circulation.
Okay, because it's been 2 years, or 2 quarters, I guess. Is it quarters or years? Oh, no, it's year over year, so it's 2 years of a fairly substantial decrease. I just hope that the public don't suddenly believe that we're not taking the Library of Things concept seriously if we're reducing what is available after we've made such a.
And
big deal
everything
about
that
it.
we've pulled out, the goal is to put it back in, and especially related to like things like our story time kits. I don't know if anybody's rented our story kits, but they're big duffel bags filled with like books and toys, and so every once in a while we pull them all and we kind of go through them, be like, are toys missing, or they've been chewed, and how do we replace all of those things, and we do them all at once. I do say that we have put a slight pause on our Library of Things at this exact moment because we're redoing the infrastructure around it, and that's also likely contributing to some of it. Because we sometimes tend to overly complicate different pieces coming in. For example, the CO2 detectors that we put in, some of the processes that we had in place took much longer than they should. So we're actually working on standardizing that it's either this type of loan, this type of loan, or this type of loan, and they go into one of these 3 buckets in order to simplify some of that. Because we do have some exciting projects coming up for the fall that we're really excited, that will really expand our library of things. So we've kind of restructuring some of that thing in order to streamline some of those pieces. So that's also accounting for a little of this.
Okay. Digital presence on page 1, an increase, and the explanation is due to Instagram engagement. What are you actually measuring? What is that quantifying? Is it likes? Is it hit? Or like, what are you actually using to base that number?
I don't know exactly, but I can get that for you. What is
Okay.
the metric inside the, oh, do you know?
Caitlin
Oh, do you
seems to
know?
be
You
popping
know.
up and
She
down.
knows.
Excited to answer the question.
Well, this is where our definitions come in handy.
yeah.
So we are measuring the count of followers.
Oh, that's followers. Okay. It'd be interesting to also have a look at what the engagement numbers look like too, because I mean, the social media world, that's.
So likes, comments?
Yeah, because
those?
that's when, those of us that really sort of focus on SEO stuff, it's and social media marketing, it's really the engagement numbers that are important, because you're, in my opinion, the digital, I mean, if you're doing followers, that will taper off eventually when you hit a sort of a plateau, and then it's going to start to drop. But if you measure engagement, then you actually know how successful it is. It's easy to get followers. It's not so easy to get people engaged in your social media.
Okay.
Salsa, would you agree with that? Yeah.
We can look at adding that, another line for that.
Thanks. It would be a very interesting statistic. And I know we used to have a statistic like that a long time.
We did at one point, yeah.
But then it became very convoluted because there was too much in it. And then,
Yeah.
and then we asked the question, are those unique IPs versus, somebody just refresh.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into it, but there's some best practices in reporting engagement that is, I guess, our industry standards now. So if you might want to look into that, because that'll really give us a good sense of what we're doing. And it gives you a metric to really say, are we investing enough in this? Are we investing too much? Could we do something different, kind of thing? So I would strongly suggest that. And I had a third one, but I can't. Iroquois Ridge, 2 years of decrease, and I see the explanation is because you were closed 2 days and there was some pool repairs. Does that adequately explain the reason, or does it have something to do with the opening of 16 Mile?
Opening of 16,
The little branch.
temporary line?
Yeah,
I don't know.
because that's a pretty big number.
We'd have to dig into that a little bit. We can definitely look into that. I do know that, the pool being closed up at Iroquois Ridge this year, not to mention the disruption with the front entrance not being available, has caused issues. And people might have just be choosing to go to somewhere else.
Right.
So it could be a combination of other things, but we can definitely try and figure out if we can track that.
I think it'd be good to do that because it's 2 years. So, I mean, it can't necessarily just be the pool, and
Yeah.
it probably not that. So there's maybe something else going on that it might be worth, looking into. And it could be something as simple as people migrating libraries, because I guess up until the point 16 Mile open, that'd be the closest place that Ward 7 residents would probably go to the library. So it could be something as simple as that. But it just, to me, that was a bit of an alarm bell that we should probably have a look at and see if there's something that we need to be doing better, or, maybe it's, I don't know if it's parking, like there's a million different criteria, so let's have a look at that.
16 Mile has its own issues with parking.
I know. I'm just curious if that could be part of the problem. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you for entertaining those. Did I inspire any additional ones, or are we good to Andrew? I knew I would get somebody else.
Two things. One, sorry, I just wanted to ask, where was your number on Iroquois Ridge? You were?
Iroquois Ridge was on page 4 of 24. It shows shows Iroquois Ridge with a 5% reduction in circulation in 2023, 2025, and then 15 in 2024, 25, and nobody else was anywhere near that. So it's a
Okay.
bit of a red flag in my mind.
Okay, because on page 15, it says physical circulation is up 23%. So I'm just trying to reconcile.
Fewer people borrowing more.
Yeah.
Yeah, foot traffic and circulation don't align as much as you
Yeah.
actually think they would.
No, it says physical circulation on page 15,
Yep.
up 23%. It's the same number, 86,507, but on page 4, as Jeff says, it says it's down 15%. So maybe just we need to just validate the data there. Oh, I see. That's 23% of the, that's a share,
That's a share.
Yeah.
not a variance. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, appreciate that. My other question, sorry, Tara, in the library of things conversations, you said something about loaning CO2 detectors. I don't know anything about this. Can you tell me more, please?
Yeah, so last year we introduced CO2 detectors, so people can borrow CO2 detectors. We plug them in, and you keep them in for the recommended period of time, and it just lets you know what your carbon monoxide ranking is.
Oh, carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
Not dioxide.
Yeah, it's CO.
It's CO.
CO. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was I
All
not
right.
saying CO? Sorry,
C-
CO2.
you said CO2, but CO.
Yeah.
No, okay. That.
Oh, CO.
Okay, I know
Not
what a CO
CO2.
detector is. Then that's good.
Sorry.
I thought it was a science kit.
No, sorry, my bad. CO detectors, yeah.
Why are we doing that? I think is a question.
Okay.
Like, why are we providing those?
It was a request.
CO.
We got a number of requests
Okay.
from people. Our neighboring libraries all offer them. And again, it's Library of Things in a lot of places represents things that people want to borrow for a short term, but don't necessarily for long term. So we also see, we don't offer them, but we know that a number of libraries offer them electricity monitors, and you can plug in your different appliances, and it lets you know. It's not something you necessarily need to have in all the time.
Okay.
It just kind of indicates what your washer is spending versus your oven. And so we get a lot of demands for those types of things for the Library of Things. So you don't necessarily want to own one, but you're still interested in the information.
I do see the point on the electricity monitor. I'd argue that, if you're going to have a CO detector, you probably want it there all the time. Because if there's anything in your house that could emit CO, like, a furnace, et cetera, taking it out and assuming everything's fine.
Most
is not-
fire alarms come with one detected, with one. I think it's almost built into most.
A lot of them do, but to be clear, we don't loan smoke detectors, do we?
No, we do not.
Okay. Because to me, it's kind of pushing a bit more on that boundary where I don't want to loan something that's a safety device and then they have to return it. And then they say, well, I could only borrow it for a week. Like, I don't know. How many do we have, roughly? A couple per branch?
We don't have a lot.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they were donated by the fire department.
Oh, they were donated by Oakville Fire?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Are they also donating replacements periodically?
I'm assuming that if we needed them, I would
ask?
make a phone call.
Okay.
So,
They have a best before date on them, so.
Yeah.
We
All
should
right.
probably report everybody that actually borrows one to the fire department. So they can send a firefighter to go visit them.
let's not tell Chief Wesano.
It is a carbon dioxide detector? Okay.
In the library, I borrowed one. It was very fascinating.
Is it?
The level of carbon dioxide go up with your
I'm deliberately confusing, well, not deliberately, deliberately confusing you.
Okay, that'd make more
It's
sense
not
because that's not
monoxide,
something
it's
you keep all the
dioxide.
time.
Okay, it's
you
not the
know?
safety
Sorry,
device.
that's
it's
my
the-
bad.
okay. Is this like to
'Cause
see
it's
how
the
well your
CO2.
plants are growing or
I'm
what?
getting them confused.
To see how well your plants grow or what?
Yeah.
Well, like honestly, I don't, what's the purpose?
research about how carbon dioxide
Yeah.
affects your sleep. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe I'll borrow one and find out.
It also affects the bubbles in your soft drink because that's how we create them.
Okay.
Apologies.
But it still came from the fire department?
I thought so. I'll follow up, but I was pretty sure.
We need to get Bill Nye in here. Okay.
Rebecca, you're up. Thanks.
Sorry, just to go back to Iroquois Ridge, and just because this is like my home branch, we've had this discussion before about like lower like circulation or foot traffic at that branch. And I think the last time we talked about this, it was because they were renovating the pool itself, like not just the whole thing. And so I guess just out of curiosity, do you always know, do you have a schedule of when this stuff is happening, and then or is it kind of like a surprise?
It depends. The town does have a robust asset management system in place to keep track of things. Iroquois Ridge is an older facility. It is an older pool. So there was a number of issues that were unforeseen related to it. I think the renovations that are undergoing now were planned, but the ones last year were not. But yeah, they normally, when plan comes up, they let us know, and we kind of work in collaboration to let us know.
That's cool.
How that
And
kinda works.
sorry, just to add, like, I was there, I want to say Tuesday night. It was packed. And so I don't think there's a lot of issue with traffic there, but that's just like anecdotal. So.
I can't believe that you call Iroquois Ridge an older library. I still think of it as, that's that new place we opened a few years ago. Ray, you had a comment?
Yeah, just, Paul probably could jump in here too. There's a rotation on maintenance of all the pools, and the intent is not to close 3 or 4 at once. You know, they got to rotate through. And also, we advise the residents they can use the other pools. Programs have to be moved and so forth. So it is a complex problem sometimes. But yeah, you're right. The library should know when those pools are closed for maintenance, whether it be the tank or the deck. But sometimes there's emergency, and so it does happen. Yeah. So, anyways, I just leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? I think the consensus is that we like this report, so keep it up. We made a couple of suggestions for enhancement. I apologize for not reading your definitions. My questions, my suggestion still stands. Had I read the definitions and I could have phrased it differently, I apologize. As somebody that's into bylaws and laws, I should know to always go to the definition section, so I apologize for that. Members of the board, can I get a motion to receive the report, please? I have Celso and Rebecca all in favor. That is carried. What are you laughing at me?
Can we put Bill's name in there instead?
I think I've called on Bill before, haven't I?
Yes, you have.
Okay. But thanks for looking out for him.
Yeah.
We all have
Even from this far.
we all have to keep an eye on Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all have a buddy, a board buddy.
That's a new program. Library things and board buddies.
Board buddies.
Yeah. Okay, 7.5 CEO update.
It's just a couple updates for you tonight. So we've already talked a little bit about 16 Mile. It is still on track for opening in Q1 2026. We're working on exterior signage for the park and parking lot at this point. Just an FYI that Olivia Harris, who was the supervisor of Central, has just been hired as the new manager for 16 Mile. So we're very excited to welcome her on board in the new manager position, and she is already hard at work, planning for the onboarding and hiring of all the staff and everything that needs to happen to get that open in February. The new Central project, so the structural investigation is pretty much done. The report is with the architects, and then we are setting up a meeting for the full team to meet, regroup, go through the report, and determine next steps. So once I have a better sense of which way that we're moving forward, I'm going to send the board an update, probably in an email in advance of June, just to give you a heads up about where we're looking to go with that, because that will also inform what we're going to do at the June meeting. The newspaper digitization project is moving along fantastically. They are flying through a bunch of these databases. They moved on to the Oakville Record Star and has been uploaded. And then the daily journal record is being scanned and processed next week. And the content is viewable to staff. Although we have been replacing, where we have existing copies on the public, we've been taking the new digitized copy and swapping them out with that piece because the quality is superb of what's coming out. So it definitely makes a difference to what's up there right now. So we're very excited to at least be able to introduce those where there's already a duplicate in place.
Can we see some samples?
I can absolutely send you.
Thank you.
Yeah, a link.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I was looking, there was one, that's actually, one of the ones that we replaced was from 1950. And I don't even know how it's in the database now. I meant to follow up with Julia, but I'll send it to you. But it was looking at Easter outfits. There was all these commercials for like men's Easter outfits in there. And
well, that would have been helpful a few weeks ago.
The quality of it was phenomenal.
I was shopping a few weeks ago for my Easter outfit, and that would have been helpful.
Right? Yeah. So. But no, I'll definitely send you guys the link, and you can take a look at that.
That's very exciting.
Paper.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the Trafalgar Urban Core South branch, we had a really great meeting between the town, the library, and Brant Haven a couple weeks ago. We came to an agreement about just about everything. So now the lawyers are just finalizing their legalese, and then the town and Brant Haven will sign. And at that point, I'll inform the board, and we'll move forward with next phases. I will flag that one of the ongoing conversations, and I do need to adjust the completion date, is that when we started this process, when it went to council in September and the board previous to that, Brant Haven was expecting a 2028 or a 2029 opening. That is no longer their expectation. So we have had multiple conversations about our comfort levels for dates, the outside dates dates for some of those things. I'm not overly fussed. We're supposed to open Central in 2028, so I'm not displeased not to have them together, but they are continuing to look at options for that site, whether it be condos, rental, or different kind of pieces as they kind of work through that. But just given the current market, that's become a bit more gray, but there are outs within the agreement based on timelines and checkpoints for them to provide us with information related to that, so. Yeah, that's, well, Trafalgar Urban Core South is the growth node. I blame planning. Yeah, so this Trafalgar Urban Core South is north of Dundas, and the north is south of Bermanthorpe.
Right.
But I'm not exactly sure where they meet, because I'm not sure there's a road there yet, but there is a line on a map somewhere. So I'm not sure if anybody caught this, but the Oakville market at the Dundas Square, run by the Sit Van Club, opened, and we were lucky enough to partner with an organization that brought their Curiosity Coop, and so we had a great article in Oakville News. Was actually in, and I'll send you the recording of the coverage. I can't remember. It might be Rogers, one of the local channels was out and did a really great interview with some of our staff with that kind of.
Be likely Cogeco.
Cogeco,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Thank you. Related to that, but this was very popular. We were really excited to have it stop. We were the only Toronto halt and stop for it as it travels across the country. So our Oakville Ambassadors return. This initiative that we brought in last year to really help drive our outreach efforts is coming on. So this is students, and it comes through the Canada Works grant that we apply for every year. In order to support that, we bring students on board. And this particular position goes out into the community to really enable those outreach. So the goal being that they have the book bikes and their bikes, and they go out to set up in different parks and run activities and just have conversations with people, again, trying to get into those gap areas. And they also attend different festivals and events throughout the summer. So. Just a heads up that I'm very excited that the Urban Library Council's 2025 CEO Roundtable is taking place in Toronto. This is its third year. It's previously been in places like LA. And so I'm excited that it's coming to Toronto. One, because I didn't want to have to go to the US. And two, it's really great that it's close to home. I normally go to their fall forum, but I won't this year because I'm going to the CEO Roundtable this year. But I'm particularly excited because Toronto will be going in depth to their Enabling Toronto's to Grow and Thrive study, which is a North American first that really goes into a social impact. So they've actually worked with Scandinavian company called It's a Bird to really dig into what is the social impact. And so we're very excited to learn more about that, and as well have a significant number of our US counterparts come to Canada, relax, enjoy us for a little bit, hopefully fill their buckets before they head back down and continue their battle south of the border.
Will you be able to, I mean, assume you can, will you be able to provide a presentation to us on the Enabling Torontonians to Grow and Thrive presentation? Because that sounds fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and particularly because one of the things at the Canadian Urban Library Council meetings we just had in Kelowna in April was actually taking Toronto's research and actually applying it nationally. So recognizing that we don't want to duplicate this for every single library across Canada, but probably taking the learnings from Toronto. And so that's one of the things that CULC is working on is okay, how do we take some of this and be able to nationalize it? And so there are libraries coast to coast who are working with It's a Bird to be able to do that. I put Oakville's name forward, but they picked Burlington. but that's okay. We're not that different. And so we're excited to be able to bring that forward too, but I will definitely bring something forward with this, and as that project moves forward, we'll bring more information about that as well.
I mean, I wish they picked Oakville, but having Burlington as part of this is great because it provides that suburban context
Yes.
versus the urban context, which are
Correct.
extraordinarily different.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Barry's also picked too. Just a reminder that it is time for the spring board assemblies, which is gatherings of board members for as part of the Ontario Library Service. So they have changed their model that board assembly meetings are now open to any public library members who wish to attend. So our meeting, because they do it by population, but our meeting would be June 10th, 6 to 8. So if anybody is interested in attending, let me know. I can get you signed up with the link. It is a great opportunity. I think Bill's attended a couple of times. I think, has anybody else attended any of the board assemblies? I can't remember. Anyway, they just discuss about what's basically happening across the province for libraries of that size. So if
And it's
anybody's
virtual,
interested, let me know.
correct? It's virtual?
It's virtual.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And then June is Pride Month, so we do have a number of programs coming up that you can look for, including story times and book hubs, creation zone programs where you can make your own T-shirt. And then we continue to have a really great and strong partnership with PFLAG for various programs. And Marcus as well is working on something with the Oakville Community Foundation, which is a film that's being promoted across the country. So more information will come about that as that gets finalized. There's a line in there, shouldn't be. And then the Halton Pride Parade, thank you to those who joined us last year. I think it was Avis and Celso. This year it is happening on July 20th. It's a Sunday, so we'll be participating again. Prism is expanding it, so it will include not only the parade, but an event at a local park afterwards. And then all 4 libraries are partnering to be part of that Pride in the Park piece. But again, we'll be looking for anybody interested in walking with us in the parade. So as we finalize the details, I'll send out the invitation, and you're welcome to join us again. Right? Oh, sorry.
Meredith? Or Rebecca, sorry.
Sorry, why is it in July?
I'm not sure why it's in July. Just it's always
Yeah.
been in July. This
Oh,
is the
okay.
3rd year.
Cool.
And they put it in July. And I don't, there's something in the brain, well, I think it's because, and I'm probably shouldn't. June is it's reminding me that June is Pride Month in the US. And that it doesn't necessarily reflect Canada. So I think there's something in July that they're trying to reflect. And also, there's a pretty large effort that they do. There's a lot to do in June, but people aren't only queer in June. And so how do we bring that outside of June is also part of that conversation.
There's
so.
the quote of the board meeting.
Yeah. I took that from Andrew from the CCH.
I'm gonna put that on my T-shirt.
And then final, going back to Iroquois Ridge, just a heads up that the tiling is expected to be complete tomorrow, at least in the main entrance. The community center's new desk should be open in the next week or so. The pool is not scheduled to reopen until September, and that just a heads up that we are planning right now for another partial closure in September for an upgrade, for the continuation of the HVAC unit being upgraded that will require a crane and roof access. So we'll have to be closed on that date. We don't have a date yet, but when we do, we'll just inform the board when that needs to happen. So.
Terrific. Any further questions? Can I get a motion to receive the CEO's report? Thank you, Ray and Rebecca, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, members of the board, we do have one confidential discussion item, but I believe that there's satisfaction with the report and we can approve that without going in camera. Can I get a motion to approve the recommendation that's contained on blue paper, please? Bill, see, I got you in. Bill and Meredith, all in favor? That's carried. I believe I can read the motion, right? Because the agenda actually alludes to what the issue is. So I can read the outcome, correct? Okay. So I'll report to the public that we just approved a motion that was contained in a recommendation report, which is on blue paper because it was dealing with a confidential matter dealing with an identifiable individual. The motion that we've just approved is that the Oakville Public Library Board approve the 2024 Performance Evaluation Report with a recommended salary adjustment for our CEO. And I'll just say by way of comments that based on your report, you are an extraordinarily valued member of our team.
Thank you.
We don't want you to go anywhere. You're doing a fantastic job, and don't go anywhere. Did I say that? Yeah, I said that twice.
I appreciate that. Thank
I can say it again. So that is the conclusion of business, unless anybody has anything new to bring to the board tonight. I do not see anything. Okay, the next board meeting is Thursday, June 19th, right here in the council chambers at 7 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Well, before I adjourn, anybody that might be watching us on YouTube tonight, thank you for tuning in. Paying attention to what happens at your library is laudable. Thank you for your interest. And if you ever have any questions, never hesitate to reach out to either Tara, or because she's not going anywhere, or even myself as the chair, jeff.knoll@oakville.ca. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. So with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn, please. Ray and Celso, all in favor? That is carried. This meeting is adjourned.